everyone. Welcome to the Cynthia Linux Show. I am your host, Cynthia Linux. Here again to remind you that this is the best season of your life, or it can be the best season of your life. Are you guys feeling what I am feeling? I am feeling a sense of joy, peace, fulfillment. There's just something. I said to my husband, there's just something in the air. There's just something that, and I don't know if it's because the kids are back to school. I live in a community where we have a school close, and kids are back to school, and that means travel is a little easier, and that's the kind of the time we travel after the kids are back. There's places are less crowded and so forth. So I have a lot to be looking forward to, and I hope you do too. But in the meantime, there's just a sense of joy that is happening that I am feeling, and I just hope you are at that place as well, regardless of what's going on in your life. Always find that place of peace and that place of joy. And sometimes, things can get a little difficult, and but then we all have a choice. And I say choose peace so that you can, walk in that place without being anxious or depressed and things of that nature. So anyway, your journey of self-discovery is going and growing exponentially. That's what you have shared. So is mine. Of course, my journey started about 15 years ago, but it never ends. It doesn't come to an end because there is not a destination with this journey. As time goes on, you evolve, you grow, you progress, you learn new things, and you remain relevant. So that's the place that you need to make sure that you are, a place of relevance. You want to know what's going on, and you want to be in the know, not only for your life, but you want to know things that are going on in the world, in your community, and in your life. One of the things that I learned this week or last week, which I've always said, and it's the motto from this Tim Walz, mind your own damn business. I love that whole motto just because that brings peace. I know I do. A lot of situations, you want to get involved, whatever, but I've learned to mind my own damn business, and that works. I encourage you to do the same, especially since you're on this journey of self-discovery, to come into your true identity and to come into your true authentic self, to have self-expression, and to be able to be who you are and know who you are, and know how to set boundaries and say no and say yes when you mean yes, and just to a place where you come to love yourself in such a way that you're fulfilled and your life becomes so much more meaningful. I wish that for you. Now, last week we talked about, those of you that shared that it's become somewhat of a challenge because you've come to a place where you find that, in your journey of self-discovery, as you navigate and try to peel off the layers of things that, maybe situations that's happened in your childhood or growing up, whether it's trauma or just experiences that you have had that perhaps weren't very pleasant and so forth. And many of you have shared that most of your experiences that you've had has to do with your religious indoctrination. Now, I know that's a big one because I was in church for a long time. I didn't grow up in church, but I was in church for a long time, and left about 15 years ago, and that's when I started my journey of self-discovery. And for me, it wasn't too much of a challenge, simply because when we left church, we just left. We took a sabbatical and we left, and I just came to a point where I had a defining moment. What type of life did you want to live, Cynthia? What did you want to do? And I just really, I introspected, and I I really delved in on the inside of me and really got raw with me, the kind of life I wanted to live, and how I wanted to feel, and how I wanted to, uh, my expectations, and just I wanted to take the rudder. I wanted to take the wheels. If it's up to me, then I wanted to take the wheels. And then with that, I also had to revisit the religious teaching that I had, because one of the things that happens to us is that, when you have been indoctrinated by religion, there are rules, there are laws. You can't do this, you can't do that, you can't eat this, you can't eat that, you can't wear this, you can't wear that, you can't hang around with this kind of people, you can't hang around with that kind of people, you can't wear this, you can't wear, it's just such a bunch of stuff that, and, is this pleasing to God? Is this stuff pleasing to God? It's just a bunch of stuff. And I didn't want to be bothered with all of that, because, on the inside of me, and you may be feeling the same thing as well, but the thing is, unless you acknowledge it, admit it, recognize it, and say, yes, this is how I feel, it won't go away. It'll gnaw at you, gnaw at you, gnaw at you. And then what happens is that you try to reconcile it. If you're still walking in the belief system, which I did for a little bit after I left, because you have all these beliefs, and if that's what you know, that's what you know. Now I needed to get rid of that, simply because they no longer serve me. So as I went on to kind of discover, because I needed to know the truth, because that's the only truth that's going to set you free. So I needed to know the truth of this whole thing that took over my life. That's why I say, I know that church, religion, dogma, doctrine, and all of that is created to dominate, to manipulate, and to control the masses. What else is it there for? I mean, think about it. Church, you don't need church. You don't need to go to church. You can have that spiritual walk, if that's what you seek, on your own. It's just that you're taught not to trust yourself. It even tells you, but this Bible, as I said last week, the Bible is a fairy tale. It's a book of fairy tales. It's a book of claims and promises with no receipts. There is nothing that you can show proof and verified proof of anything at all. No proof. So I had to come to a place where I questioned that, and I had to make a decision. What was I going to believe? So with all of that, I became a realist. I'm not an atheist. I'm not an agnostic. I'm not a theist. I am a realist. And that has worked for me for the past 15 years. It's been 15 years since we left church and all that religious doctrine, and just shaped our lives the way we want to live, and created our own moral code, and driven by love, kindness, and compassion. And within those three principles, there's just the bigger things. If you help your neighbor, we're just guided by that. It's just simplified, and that's worked for us locally, and even when we travel. You see people, you love them, you talk to them, you respect. I'm big on respect. This love stuff is good, but respect. And of course, when you respect someone, it's a gesture of love and so forth. So we're big on that, and that works for us. It simplified our lives. Now you're going to have to do the same thing. You're going to have to find out what works for you. Now, when I went back, as I mentioned before, I've read the Bible many times, cover to cover, but I read it with a biased mind. I was just confirmation bias. Whatever you're taught from the pulpit, that is how you read it. But when I went back and start reading with a critical thinking mind, logical reasoning, I start, exercising that. Then, of course, faith goes out the window because, faith is simply a belief system. It's a belief system. That's why it says faith is the substance. There's no substance of things hoped for. Religion is big on hope. They sell you hope. Hope. You see it on social media. People offering hope. I have a word from the Lord, or the Lord said this, or this is a word from the Lord. But you hang on to it until you until you expire. Brings no comfort because it says hope deferred makes your heart sick, makes you sick as hell. Hope deferred. So I like to get myself comfortable here on this tall chair. So that's the whole thing. Hope deferred makes the heart sick. So I used to read it with a biased mind. But when I went back and started reading, because I had to, after doing my research and realized that, wait a minute, this Bible was created by, was written by ancient men, their views, their thoughts, all these stories and so forth. It was written by ancient men. And then, of course, they sold us the idea that the Bible is the inerrant word of God and so forth. And, we bought all that. In the meantime, do you know that, and of course, they also sold us Christianity, which started with the Roman Catholic Church. And with that, do you know that today there are like 45,000 different Christian denominations? Now, if the Bible was the inerrant word of God, there would not be so much confusion and so much division among Christians. If it was the inerrant word of God, then we would all be getting the same thing. We would all be getting the same thing. If I say dog, in your mind, you're going to think of a dog. If I say black German Shepherd, that's the image you're going to create in your mind. Regardless of where you are, in any language, that's the image that you're going to have in your mind. Big black German Shepherd, good-looking German Shepherd. Or Doberman Pinscher, I guess is what I'm thinking of. Doberman Pinscher. You're going to have, universally, you're going to have that image in your mind. Why? Because that type of dog does exist. There is verifiable proof that that dog exists. So, if the Bible was the inerrant word of God, then we would all think the truth. If it was truth, we would all think the same thing. But that's not the reality. The reality is there are 45,000 different Christian denominations and over 3,000 translation, Bible translation. Imagine that, 3,000. And who translated it? Men. Mortal men. Their views, their interpretation, their opinion, it's all men. They did not even have the decency to give a woman some kind of of place in the stories, other than her being abused or raped or something like that. When they go to war, they kill all the men and they take all the virgins, and they, it's just, anyway, men wrote this Bible and sold it to us. They came over here, the Quakers, the Christians, they all came over here. All the religious people, Quakers, Protestant, Christians, whatever. Anyway, we were sold that. And the Bible is a book of fairy tales. Now, that's my conclusion. That when I did my research to find out where did it come from, who originated it, what was who created that, under what circumstances in the ancient world, what were they thinking, what was the purpose of it, and so forth. And that's the conclusion that I came to. That's what I came to realize, that it's created to dominate and manipulate and control the masses. And when I start reading it again, guess what? I put on a different lens. I start seeing it totally different. When I start reading it again, and you start with the first chapter of Genesis, and, Genesis 1, 2, whatever, and then you realize, when I got to the point where there's a talking snake, I thought, now, wait a minute. I start thinking, with logical reasoning, and like, wait a minute, a talking snake. They don't even have vocal cords. And if they did then they should be talking today. Should they not? If there were talking snakes back then in the garden, God created Adam, put him in the garden, created Eve, and she's in the garden, and he says, don't eat from this tree, because the day that you eat from it, you shall surely die. And Eve, went to the tree, and the talking snake appears to her and said, she said, no, I can't touch it. I can't eat from it because I will surely die. And the talking snake says, you shall not surely die. I used to believe that. I did. You shall not surely die. She ate it. She ate it and kicked out of the garden. So I start questioning that. A talking snake. And then I got to, who was it? Noah with the ark. Noah. This ark, and then, two of a kind into the ark, male, female, and so forth. And then they come out and they populate. No. Before I got to Noah, I got to, I was questioning Cain. Cain wound up with a wife. I didn't question that before. Adam and Eve had Cain and Abel. Cain killed Abel because of jealousy, and then they had Seth. Adam and Eve had a third son, Seth. But as time went on, it says that Cain had a son he had a son named Enoch. So my question was, and it's interesting because before I did not even, because they don't teach this from the pulpit. And if you ask your pastor, your teacher, about this, they're going to say it's the mysteries of God. No doggone mystery. Obviously there was some other civilization around, because where did he get the woman to be with to produce Enoch? It wasn't with his mother. It wasn't, Adam and Eve. No, he had a wife, or a partner. So I had questions, and then you had Noah, with the ark. I started questioning all of that. I question it, and you know what? Before we left church, when we would travel, we would take these long trips, and 10 hours going to Europe, 10 hours on the plane. And I had streamed all these Bible stories: Abraham, Noah, David, Esther, Jacob. I had Abraham. I had all of them, and I loved them. It was like a whole series of, their production. So I downloaded all of them. I got rid of them now because that's not my thing now. And I used to watch these movies, 10 hours one after the other. And I used to just feel some kind of way. My husband is sleeping there in the plane, and I'm watching all these movies. I used to love it. So I had some kind of a visual, based on the production of, you know, Noah's Ark with the whatever. And then Moses. Moses was one I had as well. Moses extending the rod and parting the Red Sea. No bueno. That doesn't happen. That is all a story. You know it, and I know it. We come to a place of a defining moment when we decide what we want for our lives. And it starts with your mind, because your mind is what influences action based on your belief system. And faith, belief system, is doubt. There's no truth to it. And that's why I call myself now a realist. I want to see it. I want proof, verifiable proof. I'm not an atheist. I'm not an agnostic. I'm not a theist. I am a realist. It's that simple. It is that simple. And you're going to have to determine what works for you. You're going to have to decide what works for you. Now, you may, that may be working for you. Then this is not for you. You may be triggered right now, and that's fine. Then this is not for you. But for you that have shared that you've come to a place where you can't reconcile your religious doctrine with the life that you want to live, this journey of self-discovery, and to be your true authentic self, and to have self-expression where you can just be who you are without shame or condemnation or guilt or any of that. This is for you that have said, you're stuck, you're trying to get away from that. But if you've been raised in religion for years, then it's hard, because that's all you know. But I'm telling you, when you consider that, imagine that 45,000 different Christian denominations. How does that happen? I'm telling you, if you get a Baptist preacher, a Protestant, an evangelical, Assemblies of God, put them together, after about perhaps a week, you'll see they'll be in conflict, because they each have their own thought process, their own pattern of their own way of thinking. And then, you've got over 3,000 different Bible translations. Over 3,000. One may want to use the King James Version, and one may want to use the NIV, and one maybe the common, the common Bible, common language Bible, and one may want to use the Amplified Version. Madness, and that's what it causes us. I used to have like about 100 Bibles, because I always wanted to get it right. But, as I said, I used to read it with a biased mind, confirmation bias, only what was taught from the pulpit. And when you go back into the Old Testament, which is something that's not taught from the pulpit, because, that God that these writers created, that God was a barbaric, wicked monster. That if I had to choose between, if there was a heaven and hell, which, again, that is a belief. That's what you believe. And I'm not here to take that away from you. But for me, I know there's no heaven. There's no hell. When you're dead, you're just dead. And if there was a God, I would have some questions for God. And I would say, why do I need a middleman to come and tell me all this about your existence? I need you here. Absolutely. And you know what? I would be escorted into heaven if there was a heaven. I would be escorted into heaven for having the guts to question, for having the guts to want more, because that's how we are created. I would say, well, you knew me before, you knew me according to this word. You knew me from before I was in my mother's womb. So you knew who I would come out. You are omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent. You knew all that. You knew that I would you know, I don't want to say backslide because I didn't backslide. I just left. You knew that I would take this position at this point. You knew it. And I know the Bible says he creates vessels of honor and vessels of dishonor. So if I'm a vessel of dishonor, that is fine with me. And somebody said, so what if you're on your deathbed? Wouldn't you say this in the spirit just in case? No. Why? Because that would be out of fear. And that is how that religion is propelled. It's propelled out of fear and obedience, because that's what this God of the Bible, that's what God demands. He demands obedience. God's idea of love is obedience. You must obey. That is what he demands, obedience. God demands obedience. And then it's preached with an element of fear. You must be born again or else. As a matter of fact, sometimes when people realize that I am not a Christian, they get a little alarmed, and they start wondering, well, she's cool. That's how people have referred to me. She's cool. Like, wow, because there's no difference between you and me. Your Bible, as a matter of fact, your Bible is not a good reference for a moral code. My morality is better than what's in the Bible. I'll stick with mine. And people realize, wait a minute, what do you believe in? I say, I have no belief. I don't believe in anything when it comes to Christianity and religion and all of that. And you know something? You can call people that don't believe in the Christian doctrine an unbeliever, but guess what? There are more than one religion. There are more than one God. That's why God said, "Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, all thy soul, all thy mind, and thou shalt have no other God but me." He knew it. There's Zeus, there's Athena, there is I think it's Dionysus, Apollo. There are other gods. And God knew it. The children of Israel, that's why they would go into these other communities and start worshiping these other gods, and God would be so mad and angry at them. They wanted to live a different lifestyle, and God had a certain way for them. God, the Israelites, they were God's chosen, and they wanted to live a different type of way. That's why when Moses went up on the mountain to get the rules, the laws of God, and they were down here, they're like, wait a minute, he's taking too long. Let's just do our own thing. Again, that's not a matter of good or bad, right or wrong. That's just what they did. They just wanted a certain freedom. They're like, he's just taking too long. And then he comes down and, all of that stuff. And it's just too much. It's just too much. It's just madness, mental gymnastics. Do I please God? Am I doing the right thing? Am I thinking the right thing? My thoughts, my this, my flesh, and all of that. I don't want to live that way. And not, the Jews, they don't want to live that way either. And then people talk about free will and free will. No, there's no free will, because he said, if you are willing and obedient, you will eat the fat of the land. Well, let me tell you, I was, like now, since we left church like 15 years ago, we're not willing and obedient to, to this word. No, we don't tithe, and we have been really fortunate to have had some great opportunities financially and to live a life where we can enjoy and so forth. But that was God's. It says that God's covenant with Israel. Well, for covenant, you need two. You need two people to be in consent. But that covenant was under duress. That was God's covenant with Israel. It wasn't Israel's covenant with God. It's not like they wanted to. No, they were like forced into it. They were forced into that covenant. They didn't choose that. They didn't choose to. They didn't choose to worship God, that God, according to the Bible. They wanted they and he kept after them. That God, according to according to the scriptures, he keep going after them, and then it would have them be oppressed by the Jebusites, Amalekites, and all those communities and so forth, and then he would come and free them, and then he says he would tell them, you go to war and I'll make you win, and you take, you kill all the men, and in I think it was in the Amalekites. He said, kill them all, men, women, suckling babies, children, dogs, kill them all. But in some other cities, he would say, kill the men and take all the virgins for yourself. Imagine that. That pissed me off. Imagine that. Take the virgins for yourself, and you can go into her, and that means you have sex with her. It's not consensual sex. It's like you rape her. And God condones that, because he'll tell them. Just like he condoned slavery, he'll tell the Israelites, go into this place and you can buy slaves, and then you can own the slave. They'll become your property, and you can will it to your offsprings and so forth. I didn't like any of that. And who am I, mortal person? Yes, but God, according to this Bible, if he created me in his image and his likeness, and if he knew me from in my mother's womb, then he would have known that I would have that kind of resistance to that. And yes, I do that proudly, and I do it without fear. And if like somebody says, what if you're on your deathbed? It's like one friend, one of my, not, well, we don't, we're distance ourselves. And she says, well, I rather be born again and be with God than just in case. Well, that's motivated by fear. Fear is not, when it comes to this religious stuff, that's not part of my psychic anymore, because I know nobody, if you can confirm, if you have verifiable proof that there is a heaven, or verifiable proof that there is a hell, then I will believe it. But in the meantime, it's simply your belief, your imagination. It's simply what you have imagined. And you continue, you're not sure, but just in case. And some people live their whole lives just waiting to go to heaven. Waiting to go to heaven. My friend, when you're dead, you're dead. Go to heaven or go to hell. And then, a lot of Christians, they try to intimidate you, or, scare you, you're going to go to hell. Or they would say, well, I'll be praying for you. No, you don't need to pray for me. You need to pray for yourself. You need to pray for yourself. Don't try to pray for people. God is not stupid. God knows. God knows me. He knows you. He knows that you may stay in that whole thing about him. And he knows that I would rebel against that. And, this just happened the 15 years ago since we've left, because before we were not pew warmers. We were, me, because I'm the one that, dragged my husband into this, religious thing. But, I was not a pew warmer. We were active. So I was, this is something that I believe, and I have come to know that it is none of it. It is a fairy tale. It is a fairy tale. None of it. You cannot. And what happens is that it banks on fear and hope. It's always, oh, I have a word. And God said, well, let me tell you something. If this is true, in Genesis, it says that God created us, male and female, Adam and Eve, in his image and in his likeness, then you ought to be able to perform as he did. And in the New Testament, it says, and greater works shall you do. Where is the greater works? Where is the greater works at all in your own life? In your own life, where is the greater works that you're doing? Where is it? What is it? Where is the greater works that you're doing? Where is it? No greater works. There's nothing in this Bible that can be proven. And then when you go back and you think of things, I remember when I was thinking of, I remember one time I had this teaching on Jonah, in the belly of the whale for 3 days. Come on, Cynthia, come on. It's almost embarrassing now, because I believe that. It's almost like religion really domesticates people. It's like a brainwash. You don't think. That's why it says, lean not unto your own understanding. Lean not unto your own understanding. In all thy ways, acknowledge him and he will direct your path. That means don't think of anything. Don't resist. Don't question. Don't ask. Don't wonder. None of that. Lean not unto your own understanding. Just put it to rest. Listen to what the preacher has to say, and that's it. Lean not unto, and then if you ask, it talks about the mysteries of God. Why would you imagine a kid is growing up and they reach puberty? They reach puberty, and the parent knows all about the changes that the body will go through. Hormonal changes. If it's a female, those changes with their cycle each month. Libidos, hormones kicking up, liking the opposite sex or whatever, liking people around them, and all of that. But the parent doesn't share anything with the child because it's a mystery. It's a mystery. I don't need you to know that now because it's a mystery. And the child is growing with all these thoughts and changes and desires and feelings in their body. And the parent tells them nothing. Why? Because it's a mystery. It's the same thing when we say it's the mysteries of God, and God's ways are higher than our ways, and no one knows the mind of God. So we should navigate through life held at a high standard that we can't keep. That's why people, the fall, these pastors, they do stuff. They want to live a certain life. And, I know a couple, about 3 pastors that pastored forever and left church. And now it's like they are the biggest advocate because they understand, and now they're sharing their lives of the things they used to do and the challenge they used to go through and all that. They're human. You don't even need church. There's this pastor, you may have seen it on social media. He is now asking his church. He said to the church that the Lord spoke to him and told him to build a church building, costing $4 million. That's how much it costs to build a church, $4 million. And he is asking each member to contribute $2,100. Imagine that, $2,100. And, your Bible says, the building is not where I want you to worship me. I want you to worship me in spirit and in truth and in your heart, not a building. They want to have the biggest church and all that, and then you have to pay. You can't even pay your mortgage, your rent, your food, your clothes for the kids. But you must contribute $2,100. If God tells you to build that, then God needs to pay for it. God, omnipotent, omniscient, omnipowerful, omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent. God should be responsible for sustaining you. If you say, it's interesting. pastors, they say they were called to preach, to teach, and all that. And if that's the truth, take away the tithes. Take away the tithes and take away the offerings, because there's no way in there that says that, you sustain the church by tithes and offering. Take away that and see how long that calling is. God ought to be able to sustain him. He ought to be able to sustain him or her. I'm telling you, this is just too much. This is just too much. And then, it's interesting because when I keep going back and start thinking about things, and today, what we should expect to see, because if God is the same yesterday, today, and forever, then he should be producing, or you should be producing, because it says that you would do greater works. And then I think of Jonah. I keep thinking of Jonah. I cannot even get away from that. Jonah. You find people on the coast swimming, and the shark take a bite out of their leg or some member and dismember them, and they don't let you get away. Once in a while somebody may get away, but they'll bite you. So just imagine Jonah. The whale swallows him. First of all, when you swallow something, you don't just, there are gastric juices that are, that are not meant for human consumption, or to to come in contact with you. And you're going to tell me that I don't know how often a whale needs to eat, because some animals can go like a month without eating. But you're going to tell me that Jonah sat in the belly of the whale. I don't know how he could breathe. I used to think of that I used to teach that, how he could breathe, or the smell, the stench in somebody's gut. That doesn't even make any sense. Once you start viewing it with logical reasoning, it makes no sense. These writers, I'm telling you, and they have done a job on our minds, creating a heaven that doesn't exist, creating a hell, and and putting fear on people. A lot of people are, and the thing is this: there's Christianity, there's Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism. Who has the truth? What if you die according to your doctrine and then realize that Islam, that is the truth, the true God, or the Hindus or the Buddhists? Who has everybody thinks theirs is the truth. So you are an infidel to the Islamic doctrine, and they are unbelievers according to your doctrine. But even within your own doctrine, even within the Christian doctrine, 45 different denominations. That means they do things differently. They think differently. They go by a different set of rules. They're guided by a different set of laws. They have a totally different doctrine, but they may have something in common that, allows them to call themselves Christian, but it's totally different. 45,000 worldwide. Worldwide. Then they had, you remember that, they had the David Koresh over here in Texas. This David Koresh that blew up the compound, killed everyone. had them there with a standoff with the authorities and so forth, and had guns and so forth. And then there was Jim Jones. You remember Jim Jones in Guyana? He took, I don't know how many, like, few hundreds over there, and everybody drank the Kool-Aid, and people dead, kids and, adults, and they're all dead. They all drank the Kool-Aid. And that's exactly what's happening today. But the thing is, when they went there, they had no idea. They had no idea of the truth or the Kool-Aid, and they drank it. And today, so many people are drinking the Kool-Aid. It just comes packaged differently. That's why, at church, every Sunday, it's the same regurgitated message. It's just packaged differently. And Christianity has domesticated people in such a way that, and I know I was, because you don't think, the more I think of Jonah in the belly of a whale, that makes no sense, but I believed it. Imagine that. That doesn't, I'm just telling you that. I won't tell this to no one else. I believed it. I believed it. No, it makes no sense. It's like, Cynthia, what were where was your brain? I believed it. I believed it. And the same thing happens today. That's why, for you that have said that you have difficulty reconciling the life that you want with your religious doctrine, uh, it, the teaching is so ingrained in your mind that it's difficult, because that's what you have known from a child. That's what you've known from a child. That's what you have known from a child. That's what you've been indoctrinated with. And some people, they miss it. You would like leave the church, and then you miss it. You miss it, and then you go and you wonder. But again, everybody has a defining moment. And if this is your defining moment, then go right ahead and make a decision for yourself, for no one else. I have no stake in this. I share it with you. As you know, my show started as the happy mindset, because that's what I do. And it's funny, because as I go back and look at some of my posts on social media, it all has to do with upbeat and mindset and consciousness and awareness and living your happy life. And that is just me, because my ideology, my philosophy for life is that we are created for pleasure, and that's it, to have pleasure. Everything else, comes upon us, pain, suffering, and so forth. So that'll happen. But if you think in terms of the purpose of my life is pleasure, then that whole mindset, at least for me, it's worked in such a way that those are the things that I attract: goodwill, favor, good experiences, happy situations, good relationships, good opportunities. That's what you begin to attract. Again, it's all in your mind. Just like the same way, the same muscles, or the same mindset, the same chip, the same computer software that you have, that enables you to believe all this doctrine. And some people are not going to move away from that, and that's fine. I'm not here to get you to move to do anything. You and I are talking about a journey of self-discovery, which has, for you, now turned into a journey of religious deconstruction. And so this is for you and I. We're talking about that. I'm not deconstructing from any religion, because I've been gone for 15 years. But for you that are going through this journey of religious deconstruction, I didn't start there, because you know, and when I when I left church, I the first few the first few months, or the first year, I would say, because I wanted to make sure that I had a clear understanding for myself as to the origin of the Bible. I needed to know for myself. I didn't need to go search or Google or whatever. I needed to introspect and to get it for myself. So I did my research. I needed to know the veracity of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, Paul and Peter, and all of those jokers with Western names. And I don't know how they got these Western names when back in ancient days. I almost knocked this over. Back in ancient days, those names did not exist. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. No, they didn't. They didn't call them. They called them other names. Eluad, and look at all the names. If all the Jewish names. So I went back and I studied, I checked. I wanted to know. I wanted to know for myself, because my thing was, if I'm going to take a position, it's going to be one of truth. This way I could deliver with confidence, with assertiveness, knowing there was not an element of fear, doubt, or unbelief as to what, you know, my conclusion was. I needed to know for myself. So I did go through that whole journey of trying to figure out. And I'm telling you, there was no, till this day, there is no. And if you talk to people, people, they're quick to tell you about their stories, but your story is no different from somebody else. If you go to the hospital, somebody that doesn't know. Now, if you go to the hospital and somebody's on their sick bed, and you may want to bring this doctrine to them, they may say yes, and then if they're healed, they will attribute that healing to the God of the Bible. But you could take it to someone else who doesn't want to hear anything about religion, and they get healed, and they just get healed. It happens to the just and to the unjust. It happens to everyone. So yours is not a miracle. Yours is not a miracle. There's nothing special about yours, your doctrine. No. It's just, if you take a Christian and an unbeliever, you take a Christian and a Muslim, and if they talk nothing about religion, or have no religious practices and just sit and talk, you wouldn't tell, because if this one has moral values and this one has moral values, they're just good people, because I believe we are inherently good people. And not like the Bible says, you're a sinner, you were born in sin, iniquity, and you're wretch and blah, blah, and all of that. I don't believe in any of that. And that's a wicked thing to say to people anyway. Imagine telling your kid that. I rather, and when I say that we all have a defining moment, I wanted to live a life of fun, of being able to talk to people and engage them and show the respect and listen to other cultures, and the way people live, the way they think, and just navigate through life, having good relationships with family and friends, and engaging people, and having a good relationship with my husband, and enjoying ourselves, just ourselves, enjoying good sex and intimacy, and all of that. I wanted to do that unapologetically, with no shame, no blame, no guilt, none of that. Just enjoy life. And surprisingly, it has happened. The last 15 years we've lived totally, we've always had a good relationship, my husband and I. And we were fine before, but we were so regimented, so strict, so regimented, and he hated it. And then he's the one that said to me, "That's it. I am done." And I thank him all the time. I'm like, oh gosh, I'm glad you got me out of this mess. And we just laugh at it. But now we have a vibrant relationship, and it's good and it's fun, and it's, we connect better, and everything is good. The intimacy, the sex, because that's a major part of your relationship. And if you got to keep that going in with joy and pleasure and all of that, as normal, as a normal lifestyle, and not walk around with guilt or fear that you may upset God and so forth. Now, so I encourage you, my friend, I encourage you to revisit your doctrine, and see if how it affects you. And I'm telling you, Jim Jones took them over there to Guyana, I guess from the US, and gave them all Kool-Aid. They all drank the Kool-Aid. And there was just a sea of dead bodies there. And today, the same thing is happening in a different way, very subtle. People are confined to this religious doctrine, and they're so locked in and not able to live. One lady said to me, she said, "This is my religion, and I just live a life waiting to go to heaven." And that's fine. No skin off my back. But she made it clear, because we were talking, and I said to her, "Well, I'm not religious." And she was a little surprised, because she thought, "Wow, the way you come across is, so pleasant and blah, blah, and whatever." And well, yeah, because, I've got morals. I've got better morals than the Bible, because the Bible, you can't follow the morals of the Bible, because it's wicked. And, the Old Testament is not something that you hear a lot in church. And again, if you ask, they'll talk about the mysteries of God. And so you walk away void, discouraged, and no one wants to talk about it, because they don't have an answer. And everybody is guided by these. These guys were wicked to create something like that, but they wanted dominance. They wanted dominance. And that's why, even with women too, anyway, that's a whole different topic. The way women were treated in the Bible. No bueno. I'm going to leave you with that, my friend. And I know that you're going to give it some thought. You're going to think about it, and you're going to start questioning, and you may go back and read. Now, when you read, put on new lens and read the Old Testament, because God said he's the same yesterday, today, and forever. I change not. And in Isaiah 45:7, it says, I create good and evil. So he's got some issues there. He said, I create evil. So he's a God that I don't trust at all. He said, I create evil. He says it right there. So you need to know what you believe and why you believe. And you need to exercise being made in God's image and God's likeness. And greater works shall you do. If you're not doing greater works, you cannot even call yourself a Christian, because if it doesn't work, then it's not true. For me, I know it didn't work at all. Didn't work then, doesn't work now. It's my sweetheart. How are you? Yeah. Anyway, right. So it's all on you, my friend. Now, if you need to drop me a note, go to info@theCynthiaLinuxShow.com. You can drop me an email. And if you want to, if you need someone to walk with you, support you in your journey, I'm also a certified life coach. And I do offer a 30-minute consultation, free consultation, to just see if there's a match. You can, again, write to me at info@theCynthiaLinuxShow.com, and we can take it from there. In the meantime, today's Thursday, tomorrow's Friday. So for those of you that have to go to the office or go to work, You work tomorrow, but then comes the weekend. I wish you a fantastic weekend. Make it spectacular. So, anyway, hasta luego, amigo. Ciao, au revoir. We'll see you next week. Same time, same place. Check out YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Pick up the show 24/7. Ciao.